Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Yo, Paul, what's up, man?
You got an Irishman on the show here. I'm pleased to hear that again.
Our Irishman today is Matt O'Neill, and Matt teaches us that happiness is a choice, even when life gets tough. His work has positively impacted the lives of over 100,000 people worldwide. As a recognized leader in happiness education, Matt teaches us how to live a life of conscious happiness. His work includes the book, The Good Mood Revolution, and a podcast where he explains the importance of conquering negative thought patterns while embracing habits that lead to a happier life. That's going to be a big focus on the show. So I'm excited to listen how Matt can recharge our lives for the sake of long-lasting happiness and joy. So let's bring him on to the show. Matt O'Neill, welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Wish I had a better Irish accent, Charlie, but I just don't.
You just do it just to mess with me, right?
I'm so happy to be here. And this could be a great time.
Yeah, it was fun. We had fun. As the listeners know, I chat with guests earlier in the week, and we had a wonderful chat on Monday. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the thing is that you guys have fun already. I can tell you two are both tuned in and keyed in on how to be happy, because just setting up and getting ready for the show, we've been laughing and cracking jokes, and we don't have to take ourselves so seriously.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. After 7 years, you learn that. So you know what I want to do is I want to begin the show like I began our phone call, and listeners, you got to check this out because it was really funny. I called Matt. I had an 11 o'clock phone call in the morning, and at 10:50, I was reviewing what we were going to talk about, and I called my assistant and I said, Melissa, am I really doing a show on happiness? What is going on? Because the idea of happiness hit me at that point as quite an American and quite almost frivolous. But after talking with you, Matt, this week, I realized how terribly wrong I am, or I was then. So tell me, let's start this off with a little bit of grounding. How do you define happiness, and why is happiness even important?
People have been trying to define happiness for a long time. Back in the Stoics age, there was Epictetus.
Yep.
Lived around BCE. And
yeah, the leader of the Stoics.
Yes. And he said that happiness, he called it, a component of it was arete. And this was leading according to your higher self. He believed that happiness involved living a moral life. The more virtuous you were, the more you would enjoy your life. It became this idea that we should really be living our duty and doing our duty, and that doing our duty would lead to happiness. I really enjoy that definition of happiness. Sometimes doing our duty creates some unhappiness. Like sometimes we have to work really hard and we have to sacrifice some things, do what's right. Sometimes we have to forego pleasure in order to do the right thing and do our moral duty. His argument here is that the more virtuous we feel, the better we feel about living according to our moral code, happier life we get to lead. I've found that to be true. A lot of people use the American style of happiness, I think, that you were alluding to, is this idea that we should just avoid anything that feels bad and do what feels good. That's the definition of pleasure.
Yeah.
Pleasure is fleeting. It doesn't actually lead to long-lasting well-being. I teach more along the lines of the way the Stoics viewed it, and that we can really be proud of ourselves, and as we're proud of ourselves, we can find a deep-seated joy in living that virtuous life. But living a virtuous life is not easy.
Yeah, it's very challenging, especially when virtues are an almost bygone word in America. That very few of the virtues, I think, are publicly honored. I think individually in certain families, virtues are very strong, but you don't see the virtues publicly honored. There were even 20, 30, 40, say 50 years ago. Virtues were very strong when I was a kid. and they're not so strong now. Do you think?
Bringing them back.
You're bringing them back.
Yeah, in my book, Good Mood Revolution, Igniting the Power of Conscious Happiness, one of the chapters is dedicated to creating your virtues and creating your code. Because this is going to be one of the keys, and an easy thing for anyone to do is to decide, what do I stand for, or what do I wish I stood for? How would I feel admirable? And when we pick that out, and we make that our code, and we start to live by it, we get a happier life. Did it with my family, created the O'Neill virtues. I have 5 of them. The O'Neills stand for kindness, bravery, doing the right thing, being healthy, for having fun. Those are the 5 O'Neill virtues. Now, they're not the same. You may not think that having fun is a virtue, but for us, it's almost like the core values that we can live by. But man, when we live by those 5 core values, we really feel good about ourselves.
I so agree. I love that. I had a book that was out a couple decades ago that was called Getting the Right Things, and it was a formula called the 4 Ps: passion, purpose, people, and praise. And I worked through a process of where I would have activities that I would do regularly that contributed to my passion, activities that contributed to my purpose, contributed to relationships with people, and contributed to my relationship with God, and that's praise. So I did a monthly checklist. It's just a monthly. It wasn't something that I looked at every day, and I would do check, plus, or minus. And how am I doing that? And anything that got a check, minus, or below, I needed to work on. But you know what I also created after doing that? I didn't call them virtues, and I have no idea what they are. I'd have to hunt my computer to find them. But character traits, and I had 8 or 10 character traits that were very important. And I measured those for a couple of years on a monthly basis. So I'm right in line with what you're saying. I like that a lot.
Charlie, I love the 4 Ps. I knew that there was a reason that we were soul brothers.
I know.
As soon as I talked to you, that we were like instant connection. Yeah, everything you're saying, I fully agree with. I love the 4 Ps: passion. What am I passionate about, and how can I lean into that? What's my purpose? In this, there's a lot of happiness research and happiness science shows us that those 4 Ps are the 4 Ps of happiness.
Really?
This is faith. Absolutely, we need a connection with something greater than ourselves in order to have the highest levels of happiness. God is a piece of it. It's essential. Purpose, having a purpose for our life. We can endure the biggest hardships when we have a purpose. And if we don't see the purpose in the pain, then it's just suffering.
Yeah.
Oh. Pain's inevitable. Pain is inevitable. We don't get away from it. It's inevitable. We have to have purpose and understand that pain's not there to make us suffer. Pain's there to help us grow. I love people. Man, every single happiness research paper you do is going to talk about how connection with people is one of the key indicators to how fulfilling and happy your life is. This passion is a fun word. I love being passionate. So I'm not sure exactly what you mean by passion. I'd love to know more about your definition there.
Oh, would you? I wish I had a definition. Passion it's really, the way I take a look at it, is what drives you. What are those internal factors? Those almost sometimes, it's not quite ineffable. It's really not ineffable. You can't put words to it. But it's more like what drives you to life itself. With me, passion was at a time when I was painting. Now passion is writing. My passion is film. Podcast. Yeah, I could put podcast. I really do. I love doing the podcast. That's great. Something you referred to. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to get some clarification on what you meant by that. I think that's beautiful. I just recorded an episode on Cal Newport's book, Be So Good They Can't Ignore You.
Yeah.
And that book is all about how to be happy with your career. This idea, this passion that you're talking about, leaning into something that you're passionate about, said that's one of the components to being happy in your career as well. That the more you're creative in your work, the happier you are at work. So I think you're onto something with these 4 Ps all those years ago.
You know how many years when that book was written, man? 1995.
Wow.
So it was a couple of years ago.
I was 14.
What was I in 1995? So how many years ago is that? 25? So I was 50. Yeah, it's so funny to go 25 years ago and I was 50. That was a long time. I've been on this planet a long time, 3/4 of a century, man. But there's something you said too, I really liked, and see if I can quote this right, that pain without purpose is suffering.
Yeah.
But pain with purpose is growth and development and knowledge and becoming.
That's right.
That's beautifully said. I like that, man. I like that. I want to go there a bit. Let me lead us into what I'd like to talk about a bit here. And that I have a saying that I refer to a lot. I heard this quote in the 80s, "You are who you have been becoming." And I think that is so true. It's who we've been becoming from the very beginning. You start thinking of that, who have I becoming since college? No, this is who are you becoming at 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And it includes those for us, for you and I. It includes good and not so good situations in our life. And we're reminded that the not so good situations are perhaps the pathway to happiness. And so you ask me to describe a bit of my childhood, which some of the things are similar with you, right? When we talk about abandonment and rejection, that's something that you faced as well?
Yeah, that's my biggest wound of abandonment and rejection.
Mine too, man. You think that's common, or do you think?
I think it doesn't, and it's ours. We think that maybe we're alone in it. But I think when someone is brave enough like you to share their story and be vulnerable about it, lets the rest of us know that, hey, maybe I'm not alone in this, and that I'm not actually. We look at everybody else and think they've got the perfect life. At least I did when I was a kid. I'd look at all the other kids and think they had the perfect life, and I was the only one that had this crappy one. And then the more I've grown and the more I've met people, I've realized there's actually a lot of abandonment and rejection in children, and I just didn't know it was all around me.
Yeah. The heart of shame too, is it not?
That's the worst. That's the most destructive emotion in our consciousness, is the emotion of shame. That's the wound of rejection, and it makes us think there's something wrong with me. For me, I actually thought God didn't love me. I thought, why would God give me a dad that would leave me, would cause me pain every time I saw him? Why would he do that? Why would God do that to me? Must be there's something wrong with me. I'm not as good as everyone else, that I had to go through this pain. And then this thought, what's wrong with me, starts to be a subconscious program that shows up. And when it gets planted, which it was implanted in my mind, since I thought something was wrong with me, I manifested all these things that were wrong, all these people that would be mad at me, and all these situations that were really terrible, and put my life in danger, went through addiction problems, daily drug and alcohol use, and put other people's lives in danger, and was really destructive because something was wrong with me and I was unlovable. And all of it was untrue. As an innocent child, I just took on that belief.
And you know the irony of that I know you know the irony of that, but the irony of that is, why did God give this to me? Because he wanted me to be who I am today. And without that, I could not be who I am today. That was part of my God-given process.
I couldn't have become who I've been becoming, use your quote, without that exact experience that I had. I had to go through the depths of shame, think I was unlovable, only to discover, to my great joy, God was always there, was always guiding me, was there when I was rejecting him and saying that he didn't love me and I thought that he had turned his back. Now looking back on it, I can see all the guidance that was actually there for me the whole time that I was ignoring. It was actually there and protecting me and keeping me safe. And when I come to the other side and I reconnect with God after all those years and recognize that I was never abandoned and I was always loved, it is so amazing. Light that gets to shine through that darkness, I think, is brighter than it could have been if I'd had the perfect parents that I always wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. You would ask me after we were talking on Monday, you asked me if I'd share this story. And I don't know if I've ever really shared the story of my complete story, but I can share my complete story.
I haven't heard it, Charlie, and I've been really excited to hear you share this.
It's not a long story. So fortunately for the podcast, it's not real long. I'm not going to take up the whole podcast with this story, but I was raised in a, I guess today we would call it lower middle class, or we were not wealthy. And my mom and dad divorced, I think, when I was 3. And my dad was an alcoholic. And when I say an alcoholic, my dad drank at least a quart of liquor a day. So he was never sober. That was not part of it. Now, I'm sure that was part of the divorce. But then my mom, working by herself, worked a graveyard shift. So I didn't see her that much. And somebody was always taking care of me. And then it came to a point where she had 9 siblings. And 3 of them at different times offered to take me into their homes. And so I would be given to a relative, probably starting about 4 years old, 4.5 maybe. And I would go to a relative, and after a couple of weeks with them, they would inevitably ask, do you want to spend the rest of your life with us? Because they were thinking of adopting me. I didn't know that. I can know that now. But then, you know what happened, Matt, is it would be like just a matter of a few weeks later, and I was shipped off to another family. And that happened 3, maybe 4 times. And a child, I never consciously said I was not worthy. Those are thoughts that a 4 or 5-year-old doesn't have. But a 4 or 5-year-old unconsciously is getting the idea that there's something wrong with me. If people don't want me in their family, if they first say they won't, they want me, and then later they don't, then you know what I took away from that? I took away that I am really good when you first know me, but after you get to know me, you're not going to like me. And so I always had this hidden side. And then I moved in with
Charlie, that is the emotion of shame.
Oh.
I can put on this great charming act and you'll like me at first, but if you really knew me, you would know I wasn't lovable. And the poor sweet boy, I'm just like getting tears in my eyes thinking about what a sweet boy you were, and then having to go through the experience that you've gone through. It must have been very hard.
Let's hold on to that thought. And I just want to say it all turned out well.
It turned out great.
I lived with my father for 1.5 years, and my father loved me more than anything. But my father couldn't demonstrate it because he was drunk so much of the time. But I know his love. That was one thing I got from him. I know his love. I knew the dysfunction. And I actually ran away from my father. At 7.5 years old, my sister, who's 13 years older than I, helped me run away from my father at 7.5 years old. I had a suitcase that was probably 18 inches by 12 inches by 6 inches that had everything I owned. And my sister, unbeknownst to me, she had set up with an aunt and uncle, Aunt Billy and Uncle Jim, set me up that they were going to take me in. So I ran away from my father, literally, while he was at work. My sister drove me to my aunt and uncle's house. Now, catch this. So I have no idea that they really even know what's going on. So I get out of her car, have my little suitcase, and this was in 1957, I would say, 1957-ish, 58, something like that. And those were days where you could hose down the driveway. We had water. So he was out there hosing down the driveway, and I walked up to him with my suitcase, hosing down the driveway, and said, "Hi, Uncle Jim, I've come to live with you." And he said, "Welcome home, son." Can you imagine better words than that to a child who is not accepted? I remember those words.
Wow. 70
years later, I remember those words. And they were, my Aunt Billy was a goddess in my life. She was my image of God. And I still had issues I had to deal with, but I was given sanity and given love, tons of love.
And they cared for you and through the rest of your childhood?
Oh, yes, all the way. They adopted me They adopted me. They said they were told it would be best to adopt me as an early teen at 13 years old, something about in those days. And so that was when I was legally adopted at 13 years old. But I lived with them since I was 7.5.
It's a blessing.
You know,
this is what I was saying, is that as I was thinking God didn't love me because he didn't give me the dad I wanted. My dad didn't really want anything to do with my life after the age of 5 because when my mom got a divorce at that time, and he said it was my fault, and I believed him. And then he told me to try to get her back, and I couldn't, and so I failed him. And I'm thinking, oh, man, why wouldn't God give me the dad that would throw the ball with me? You know what happened? Was overlooking the aunts and uncles, like you said. I had an older brother who was 10 years older than me. He was a father figure to me. And I had my mom remarried when I was 12. He was a father figure to me.
Oh, wonderful.
And then I had great mentors that would bring me along later in my life, and they were father figures to me. And it's like, this is the way that God works, though, is that you don't always get exactly what you think the way it's supposed to look. You're always guided, and there's always an answer to that prayer. So I had a prayer that I would have a male figure in my life that would help me. God was sending me all those people. I was ignoring it. I'm like, oh, sure, they're here, but my dad's not the guy I want.
Yeah. So tell me, you know what I'm interested in, since we're so much in the same boat here, how has abandonment and rejection served you now that you've come to a point of recovery and understanding? And we're always in a process of recovery. There's no such thing, I'm an alcoholic. You never get rid of your alcoholism. You just temporarily stop it day by day. But how have those experiences impacted the work you do today with people who are looking for happiness? How does your experience of abandonment and rejection impact your work now?
So I wouldn't be doing it. I am helping people live a happier life because I've been to the depths of the lowest of the emotions. Shame is the basement, is the lowest emotion. It's the most destructive emotion. It's only because I've walked through the darkness, I know what it feels like, feel unloved, and then tried to destroy myself with all the substances and terrible choices that I could do, gotten out, then climb my way up, progression of moods into places that are so much more pleasant, that are accessible to every single person. It's only because I have found a path that is accessible to all of us that I now have a mission to teach it, help other people along that path. Now, it does help you in other ways that aren't as helpful. One of the things that for me was because I didn't think I was enough. I thought I had to achieve my way to prove I was lovable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I achieved a ton. And it didn't work. I never felt lovable achieving anything. But I thought if I just continued to achieve and achieve, it would fill this hole in my heart that couldn't be filled that way. So now I get to reap the benefits of all that achieving. That's nice. That's a benefit of it. Yeah, but it's shaped my life with purpose. So I'll tell you what happened to me is I chose a career as a real estate brokerage owner.
Okay.
And what you do in real estate, the broker, is you love the people that are in your care and you give them everything you've got. And what they do, they turn over at a rate of 30% a year. So 30% of the people you love leave you every single year.
Oh my goodness.
And I think about the spiritual reason why I ended up being a real estate brokerage owner. And of course, consciously, I didn't understand that's what I was doing. But there was a spiritual reason I was in that field, loving and giving everything I had to people that were destined to leave me. It was to heal the wound of rejection and abandonment. So every time someone that I gave everything I had to would leave, it opened up that raw wound that my dad left me and I wasn't enough for him. It continued to I would just get pummeled over and over for years. Till finally I recognized the pattern and said, I need to heal this in me, that when someone does the very natural thing of changing brokerages, which they do a 30% rate in this industry, it no longer is going to take me out. It's been taking me out. And that was a big help for me to get past it.
Let me ask this question because I think it's so essential. Was there an event, a situation, something that helped you turn? That was a gradual process, or did you just realize this is not working? I've got to do something different. What was it? How did you come up with that?
The coach.
You had a coach?
I had a coach named Matthew Micheletti, and he said every single person has some degree of shame and rejection to heal. And he said, and he used this process that I walk people through now because it's so powerful. The process, he said, I want you to go back to those memories in your childhood, and the people that you loved that abandoned you or rejected you or told you were unlovable with words or their actions. Write down a list of all the things that are coming to mind about who you are. He said, I want them to be I am statements. So for me, I wrote down statements as I'm thinking of my dad. I'd say, I deserve punishment.
Oh my.
I'm unlovable.
Really? That was that was your conscious thought of yourself.
Yeah. So this isn't, as I moved myself into that moment, the 5-year-old child, and as my dad is going ballistic on me over nothing, and I feel like my life is in danger, I'm thinking, what does this mean? So what was the thought of that 5-year-old in that moment? And it was, I'm unlovable, I deserve to be punished. And I came up with a list. The list continued on, right, from all these different experiences about what I felt. This Matt, my coach Matt, he said this trauma, these lists of words, these lists of statements are creating all the destruction in your life. This is your trauma. And this is what you've been telling yourself subconsciously for the last 40 years. And he said, if you're ready, you can put an end to it. I'm like, I'm ready. I don't want to carry this around anymore. And he said, great, because all of that's lies. It's not true. Of course you're lovable. And if you don't know it, it just means that you've been saying that you're unlovable for so long that we just need to say the truth, and the truth will demolish falsehood in a very short amount of time. So we did a couple of things. The first thing is every statement I wrote, like I deserve punishment, I wrote the counter to it right next to it. So instead of I deserve punishment, it said I deserve blessings. And now instead of I'm unlovable, I've always been loved and I deserve love. So I created these affirmations, and then I hung them up in my shower. And as I took a shower, I said them out loud. I just did this every day until that list of truths became so much more powerful in me. The lies became so much weaker that I started to live the truth.
I've got so much I want to say on that, but before I do, I think it's time for us to take a break, and then we're going to come right back to that. Okay, Paul, let's take a break. Hi, all. This is Charlie Hedges, and you are listening to The Next Chapter with Charlie. And today, my very special guest, Matt O'Neill, and we're talking about the subject matter of his book, The Good Mood Revolution, and we're talking about how do we transform our emotional and self-image issues that happen in childhood. How do we transform those, not only to recover from them, but to use them, that they are tools that take us to the next step to serve other people. So, Matt, continue with your story. I like that, where you were transforming thoughts of yourself into better ideas. So what happens after that? Go on with your story.
Absolutely, yeah. All this stuff is so much fun for me because what we're doing is all of us are programmed. We believe things about ourselves subconsciously. We made these decisions when we were small. Every single person has made decisions about who they are when they were small. Perhaps they were good. Me, I made a decision when I was a child that I was really smart. There must have been a teacher or my mom or somebody that said, "Hey, you're really smart," and then I believed it. Then I started to collect evidence. I was really smart. Then I started to think that I could figure things out, and because of that self-image, I did well in school, and because of that, then I thought I was smart when I got out of school, and so that was a really positive decision that I made. That was a really positive belief that I made. But then we've got these other beliefs. I'm unlovable beliefs that I just talked about, or maybe somebody else has a belief that I'm pretty stupid when it comes to math. It's been proven by so many scientific studies that if you tell a child they're stupid with math, they are. If you tell them that they're brilliant with math, they are. And so that's not just math in school, it's actually everything. So whatever it was Henry Ford who said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way you're right. Whatever you believe about yourself, you're right. When I believed I was unlovable, it was true. And then when I started to repeat to myself over and over again how lovable I was, it was also true. Just which of these versions of ourselves do we want to believe and who do we want to become? And it's so beautiful once we figure that out. Like, oh my gosh, I could reprogram everything. I work with people, I work with clients. Sometimes they say, Matt, as I'm saying my affirmation, my brain says, no, you're not smart. Look at all these ways that you messed up. Look at how you messed this up and messed that up. That's what we do, is we have a belief and then we collect evidence that supports it. Just because for 40 years I was collecting evidence that showed me that I was unlovable didn't mean that I didn't have a ton of other evidence about how lovable I was. When our brain starts to say the new belief is BS, I pull out a pen and paper, is what I advise us to do, and say, okay, you want to give me evidence about why that's not true. I'm just going to write down evidence about why this new belief is true. I'm going to find things from last week, from last month, last year that support my new belief. Eventually, new belief and all the evidence that we're going to write down, eventually it will overpower disempowering belief. And we literally will change everything in our lives by doing this. That's only bad mood number one. There are 8 negative emotions overcome, but that one is probably the most important.
Yeah, I want to briefly go through those, but I need to tell a story in response to what you've been saying. I just wrote a blog this morning. Usually I write my blogs on Saturday, but I have a funeral that I'm going to conduct on Saturday, so I won't have time to write a blog. But my blog that I'm writing for publication on Sunday is My Truth According to Me. And it's exactly what you're saying. If I believe, it's the Henry Ford quote, if I believe it, it's true. And, I don't know if I'm getting us off on a sidetrack. I could, but I'll just do this really quickly.
Let's go with it. Charlie,
okay.
Let's go with it. I want to hear this story.
Okay. This is a quote I got from Richard Rohr. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's Franciscan monk, but a preacher, priest guy. And he writes this. A mature God creates mature people. A big God creates big people. A punitive God creates punitive people. As we were taught in scholastic philosophy, whatever is received in the manner of the receiver. This is one of those things hidden in plain sight, but it still remains well hidden to most Christians. And I got thinking, all of the stuff in Scripture, it is predisposed on our bottom line idea on what is the nature of God. And let's just do it 2 things. Is God good and loving, or is God punitive? And with that belief, we take that belief, we interpret the whole corpus of the biblical text according to that belief. So if I believe God is punitive, I can see nothing but punitive bullshit in the Bible. But if I believe God is love, then even the punitive, even the difficult things are seen, as Teresa of Avila calls it, through the eyes of love. Everything is seen through the eyes of love. And
totally agree. Couldn't agree more. And this is what we're hitting on, the second of the negative emotion.
Okay, let's go down these negative emotions.
I want to stay with number 2. And number 2 is the wound of judgment. This is the punitive God. And that's the God that I was raised with.
Oh, were you raised in a hellfire and damnation?
Oh, it was Catholic, and the Catholic guilt.
The Catholic guilt, yes.
Yeah, and so the second most destructive emotion is guilt and judgment. So when you think that God is always watching you, judging you, and not loving you, but saying you're not good enough, and that is now reinforcing the worst of the bad moods, which is shame, that I'm not enough, then you don't even want God in your life.
No, not that God. Not that God. No.
That in fact God is not judgmental. God does not punish. What he's done is brilliant. He's created a world of consequence. And so whatever action we take has a natural consequence. It's not a punishment. He loves us so much that he allows us to make mistakes and then deal with the consequences to learn. Now when we choose things that are loving, which is his image, because God is love and everything he's doing is loving, including allowing us to have complete free will and make destructive choices and have destructive consequences. When we see him as loving, we're like, oh, wait a minute. All of this was never punishment. It was just a tool. You think about this. When you have pain, if you cut your arm, pain is telling you something. Don't do that again. Don't cut your arm. When we have pain in our life, like we hurt somebody because we were mean and ugly and unkind, that pain is also teaching us something. Don't be unkind. So the things that feel the best are the most loving things, which kind of takes us back to that Epictetus' definition of happiness, which is when we live a virtuous life, we're very happy.
Yeah, I want to move to happiness. I think we've covered the downside. I want to move to happiness, but I do have to remark when you say that God is love and is good and created free will and consequences with the free will. At that point, you know what that leads me to think is God being because God created us out of love to receive love and for love. He created us not only to give love, but God loves to receive love. It's a back and forth. Love cannot be just one way. It's two ways, the best kind of love. And therefore, God is the most vulnerable entity in creation. When God created free will, God left himself wide open to be rejected and abandoned.
He loves us that much. He allows us to reject him and abandon him.
Absolutely, has to be.
Yeah, man. Oh, so crazy. Okay,
so now tell me.
I'll go on a million tangents.
I know, me too. So let's get.
I was looking at my nativity scene this morning at my office. My daughter set the nativity scene up on a shelf in my office. I'm looking at this little vulnerable baby Jesus.
I know.
And all the sheep are looking at him, and the angels are looking at him, and the wise men are looking at him, and Mary's there, and Joseph is there. Everyone's looking at this miracle, this baby. I'm thinking, wow. And it was really cool that they got to experience God in the flesh.
Yes.
That moment that he allowed himself to be here I was struck by that. That was this morning.
Innocent, naive, and open. All right, you know what I want to do, bro? I want to let's give our listeners some ideas about what the good mood revolution looks like. Let's bring us up. Let's get some good mood stuff in here. We've done a hell of a job with bad moods because we live in there so much. But you're the crier. You're the street crier of proclaiming goodness and love and happiness. Talk to me about happiness, about how we can pursue that and the positive emotions.
Absolutely. So the first thing we do is we think that happiness is going to come from controlling all of the aspects of our lives. I thought this. Everyone think if I can just get the right amount of money, find the right partner, have the right children, live in the right house, have the right car, have the right friends, do the right activities, have the right health, have the perfect body. If I could just do all of those things, we'll be happy then. So we try and we try. It doesn't even matter if we achieve all of those things. We still get there and we're like, that didn't work.
It is. It's the when I get and if only. if only and when I get, and you get the answer to the if only, and you're still the same. You're still in the same dark room.
We're like, look, what happened? I thought that if I did all those things, and hopefully at that moment we wake up from the con. And the con is the external world that's going to bring us joy. And at that moment, we can awaken to the truth, which is happiness is inside. It's an inside game. And the kingdom of God is within you, truth. And it's always been within you. And that's like an amazing moment because you're like, whoa, this is awesome. So everything in the external world could not be perfect, but I could still be happy and joyful and full of love and full of peace today. And when we realize that, then we're like, okay, great. Now, how do I do it? So that's what I teach.
Teach me,
First
bro.
of all, we can be happy going through a diagnosis. We can be joyful losing our job. We can be happy going through a divorce. Everyone's like, you can't be happy during a crisis. I'm like, you absolutely can be happy during a crisis. And I've been a board member of Make-A-Wish for the last 6 years. I've helped children receive wishes. I've seen, there was a child that was terminally ill that was just a little 7-year-old girl, and she said, you know what I want for my wish? I want to throw a party for all the nurses that have helped me be so comfortable these years. She gave her wish to the people that had served her. And this is a happy little joyful girl suffering and not going to live this big elaborate life that we think we all deserve. And this entitlement thought that I am entitled to a life is part of the enemy of happiness. We're entitled to nothing. So the first good mood is humility. Humility says that my life is here only because God wills it. And that at every single moment, it doesn't have to be here. So when we realize that, we say, okay, now that I know that I'm not entitled to this life and that it's here because God's allowing it to be here, and I could get a terminal illness tomorrow, that's His will. I don't have it. So we move into another good mood, which is gratitude. With humility, we recognize I'm not entitled to anything. This is a very big key to happiness. And with that understanding, we move into gratitude. Thank you so much for what I do have. We go away from that old model, which was need to acquire and have, and everything needs to be perfect to be happy, into another model which says, no, I'm humble because none of that's really in my control anyway, and I'm just grateful for what I do have. This is the foundation of where we start to build happiness from.
I love that. I love the humility of accepting what we have right now. Yeah, there's something about acceptance that's huge. Is that one of your? That's one of your. That's right before gratitude.
Acceptance is one of the 8 positive emotions. Humility is a little bit different, but acceptance is definitely one of the most powerful positive emotions. So I call it the good mood blueprint, is when we get to acceptance. I just interviewed a guy today who may or may not end up working with my company. He was fired from his job. And he'd had this job, he'd served them well, he'd given them 10 years, and he thought he'd done a really good job, and they let him go. His first feeling was really bad resentment.
Sure.
And he thought, how could you do that to me?
Yeah.
After all I've done for you, how could you do that to me? And then his next feelings were anger. I'm just furious at them, that they didn't see every way I helped them. And I was talking with him about it. I said, this is my belief. This adversity was not here to harm you. This adversity was sent here to help you. He said, I'm getting to that point. I'm like, I'll help you get there a little faster. First piece of getting to understanding that all adversity is never here to harm us. It's not. But this is also going back to what you said earlier, Charlie. Our God view is that God absolutely loves us, and His love is infinite, and that every single thing that is done in our lives helping us become a more loving version of ourselves. So this gentleman who was fired after 15 years of service is ignoring, one, gratitude that he had 15 years of a career that paid him really well and helped his family buy the house that they have and do the things that they did and go on the vacations that they went on. He grew in his career in all these different ways. He gained all these valuable skills, probably made a ton of good friends. What a gift. What a gift that he got 15 years doing that work. It's gratitude. But we can't quite get to gratitude in the moment that we've been fired. The first place we have to go to is acceptance. He's there. He's fully there. In the beginning, he wasn't. He was resentful and bitter and all those other emotions that I probably would have felt myself.
Yeah, which is quite normal.
Once we say, okay, accept it, fully accept that this has happened, then let go, no longer bitter, I no longer want revenge, I just accept it. I accept that this is my fate. I'm not meant to work there. I don't know why. I'm going to accept that that's not the place I'm supposed to be. We let go of arguing with it. For acceptance, we're still arguing with reality and saying, but I'm right, that shouldn't have happened. Can't ever have peace while we're still arguing that it shouldn't have happened. So getting to a full acceptance is one. Step two is moving to what I just had described, which is gratitude. What's great about this? What's great about this for this guy who's been let go, that he has an opportunity now to reinvent himself. It's an opportunity to learn new skills. He has an opportunity to meet new people. In fact, he may find that this is the greatest that ever happened in his career. That what's coming next is going to be so great. It's going to help him grow into something he couldn't have become otherwise. He might find it is 10 times better than the job that he had been bored with for 15 years. And at the end of the day, he might look back and say, I am so grateful. Thank you, God. That it looked like a travesty in the moment, but now I see you were really looking out for me because I couldn't see what was coming. We can get to gratitude about it. Then we start to love it. I'm like,
before we get to love, I want to make a comment on that because I think it's
Sure.
really, it's something struck my mind. I'm a big fan of T.S. Eliot. I'm a big fan of T.S. Eliot, and in his collection, Four Quartets, he has a poem called East Coker, and he talks a lot about time in East Coker, and he says, every end is a beginning, and every beginning is an end. And that's the story of your friend's story, is it not? Is that this is an end, this ending is a beginning to something new, and you get to choose if you want. If you like Mission Impossible, if you accept this mission, the mission is to make the new life you've always wanted. This is an opportunity. I'm so into acceptance. And
but we don't always do that.
No.
My great-grandfather, he came from Ireland, and when he landed in New York, his wife died from tuberculosis, and his eldest son died from tuberculosis.
Oh, my.
He didn't accept that all of his friends and family that were there for his support system are back in Ireland, and he can't go back because he doesn't have the money to get back. He can't get a job in New York because he's a scab, and 1 million people from Ireland came to New York at that time, and his only job was to shovel horse manure. He was literally shoveling crap for his job. He couldn't come to acceptance that this stuff has happened and that possibly this has happened for a good reason. So he did what your dad did. He took to drinking, and he drank himself to death.
Yeah.
And if we don't come to acceptance first, to accept that, hey, this has happened, I'm not going to resist it. It's painful to go through this experience. It's painful to lose a loved one. It's painful to lose 2 loved ones. It's painful to not have the job that we want. But I'm going to accept it. I'm going to do the best with what I've got. That decision right there, if he had made that decision, I probably wouldn't be here. Maybe it all happened for the right reason anyway. But if he had made the decision to accept it, then eventually he would have found some gratitude. Because without his wife here, without his eldest son here, he still had his younger son. But there's always a gift in all of these things.
Yes.
There's a gift there for him. The gift was he could have gotten so close to that boy. Could have become best friends with that boy. And he could have worked his way up from shoveling the horse manure to possibly being the guy that supervised the people shoveling horse manure to possibly being somebody that moved into a different career. If he had just done the best with where he was, his life would have been blessed a measure.
Is that one of the steps to happiness, is accepting that this is a step, that whatever difficulty we're going through is a step to our happiness? Is that a part of the process?
Absolutely. At the end of that chapter, and I was describing this to this gentleman today, said blacksmith takes a piece of iron, throws it in the fire. After it's lit on fire and burned down, grabs a giant hammer, he beats it over and over until it turns into something beautiful. And so that's what God's doing to us.
Oh my, that is a powerful image.
We're thrown into the fire because we're being turned into the most beautiful version of ourselves if we allow the fire to purify us.
So as we're coming near an end of our show, I'm looking for a bit of clarity. And where does that acceptance and that is incredible image of melting down, then getting beat, and then it's turning stones into diamonds. And the diamond we're looking for is happiness. Is it a sin?
It's actually love.
Okay, there you go. Now we're talking the same language.
So what all of this adversity is for, eventually, is to, if we're open to it, if we're not resisting it, not hating it, not saying it shouldn't have happened, but accepting it, finally finding gratitude in it, eventually what we find, our heart breaks, is that it doesn't break into a million pieces, it just breaks open. We get a chance to look inside. At that moment, we realize, oh my God, everything is love. Everything is love. Everything is guided by a profound love, but sometimes we have to be broken before we see it. And that's the reason that God's breaking some of us, is that we're so far away and so far removed from love that the only way we can find it is to go through extreme adversity. Some cancer diagnoses, some people that are going through chemo, some people that are on their deathbed, having the most beautiful experience with God. And we think it's just the biggest travesty. They're eternal. We're all eternal. It's not a travesty. They're just learning. It's just another piece of the learning process. It's just another tool in God's toolkit. So I'm not saying I want to go through that experience. We never do want to go through the fire. I'm just saying if you're in a fire right now, it's not to harm you.
So what is the relationship? I so agree with you that the end of the day, my end goal is love. It's to receive and it's to give love and to view life through loving eyes. Is that part of what being a happy person is? It is to me, but in your lexicon, are they similar?
A definition of happiness. So we are happy to the extent that we love our reality. If there's any aspect of our reality we're not loving, that is blocking our happiness. Another way to say this is that we allow God's love to just flow through us, and we're just a channel of love, receiving, and just because all God is love. And so when that channel of love is just flowing through us, we feel absolutely elated, overjoyed. Every single thing is beautiful. All of it. All the pain, all the mean people are just people who've been through pain, who are children of God, who are lost in the darkness. And we're like, wow, it's just all just perfect. None of it is out of place. None of it is wrong. None of it's broken. It's all perfect, and it's all just here for us to move into the most loving versions of ourselves possible.
And that is reality. That's what's real. That love is what's real.
That's right.
Oh man, I'll tell you, this is so powerful. I love that love and happiness is a matter of accepting our reality. I wrote that down. I'm gonna ponder that for a while. That is so profound. Matt O'Neill, you are incredible. We could certainly go on for another hour. You and I could chat on this for a long time.
I hope we do, man. I want to stay friends.
Let's do that.
I'm a big fan of yours.
Likewise, I appreciate it. Again, thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Yeah, Charlie, it's totally my honor. You've got one of the most popular podcasts in the world. It just means a lot that you allowed me to have this conversation with you.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. I also want to thank everybody who's tuning in. I want to thank you for listening to The Next Chapter with Charlie. And as usual, until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.